Read this sentence silently. Did you hear a voice? If you did, you've just met the person you'll spend the rest of your life with. Some of you didn't hear a voice at all, and some of you are listening to me explain your own brain using that exact same voice. The scary part? That voice can become your biggest fan or your worst bully. Most people think this voice is just themselves, but it's not that simple. First of all, people don't think the same way. Your brain isn't running the same operating system as everybody else's. Some people have what's called verbal thinking. It's basically their thoughts are words. It's like a podcast. Sometimes one host, sometimes two, sometimes a whole damn debate team. Then we've got people who think visually. If I tell them watermelon, they don't hear the word, they literally picture a watermelon. And then there's a small group of people who don't really have either. Their thoughts just exist without words, without pictures. They just know exactly what they're thinking about. It's just not shaped until they write it down or speak it out loud. It's called unsymbolized thinking, which is weird to think about. Now, having an inner voice isn't a bad thing. In fact, it's one of the most useful tools your brain has. Imagine thinking out loud 24/7, every intrusive thought, every embarrassing memory, every stupid shower argument out loud. We don't want that, you know what I mean? This voice helps you practice conversations, solve problems, prepare for speeches. Athletes literally coach themselves with it. Programmers do something called rubber ducking, where they explain their code to a rubber duck because saying things step by step helps the brain find mistakes. Turns out, our brains like explaining things, even when nobody's listening. That helps you figure out flaws and fix problems more efficiently. Here's where shit gets serious. That voice wasn't born yesterday. It spent years learning how to talk. As kids, our brains absorb voices, parents, teachers, family, the people around us, not just what they said, but how they said it. If you constantly heard, "Good job, I'm proud of you," that becomes part of your internal dialogue. But if you mostly heard, "Why can't you be better? That's not enough. Stop crying. You'll never make it." Guess what voice your brain copies? Yeah, years later, nobody is even criticizing you anymore. You're doing it yourself. This is what's called the critical inner voice. It's the roommates inside your skull that somehow wakes up before you do. You look ugly. Everyone thinks you're weird. Don't even try. And the worst part, it doesn't sound like bullying. It sounds like the truth. One embarrassing memory from 5 years ago suddenly comes back at 1 a.m. and now you're replaying it from every possible angle. One mistake becomes proof that you're a failure. One awkward conversation becomes evidence that everyone secretly hates you. Your brain's threat systems can react to repeated self-criticism almost as if you're facing a real threat, even though the danger is coming from your own thoughts. Imagine being chased by a bully, except the bully lives rent-free inside your own head. But not every inner voice becomes a bully. Sometimes it becomes an entire bestie universe. Have you ever replayed a conversation in your head, except this time you finally said the perfect comeback? Or imagined someone apologizing to you even though they never actually did? Or pictured yourself becoming successful, giving interviews, meeting people who finally understand you, and before you think, "Damn, that's kind of crazy," it's actually way more common than you think. When the real world doesn't give the brain enough safety, it starts making its own. Psychologists sometimes describe this as a form of self-soothing. For some people, it can overlap with things like immersive daydreaming, while for others, it's simply a healthy imagination. The important difference is whether it helps you live your life or starts replacing it. While growing up, feeling like nobody really listened every time you try to explain yourself, you get ignored or laughed at or told you were too sensitive. Eventually, your brain gets tired of waiting for someone else, so it becomes both people, the one who's hurting and the one who's given comfort, the speaker and the listener. Your mind literally becomes a home you built because the outside world didn't feel like one. Thousands of years ago, Marcus Aurelius wrote about carrying an inner citadel, a fortress inside your own mind where the outside world couldn't reach you. Different words, same idea. idea. The mind has always tried to build itself somewhere safe. That's why shower arguments feel so satisfying. That's why fake conversations can feel more real than the actual ones. But here's the problem. A shelter can slowly become a prison. If every difficult conversation only happens inside your head, you never have it in real life. If every dream only exists in imagination, it never becomes a memory. The safe world protects you, but if you stay there forever, it also keeps you stuck. So what do you actually do if your own brain has become your biggest hater? First, stop treating every thought like it's a fact. Your brain produces thousands of thoughts every single day. Some are useful, some are complete bullshit. The problem is, we rarely question the ones said in our own voice. If a random stranger walked up to you and said, "You are useless," you'd probably think, "Who the hell are you?" But when your own brain says it, you believe it instantly. Second, notice the voice without becoming the voice. There's a huge difference between "I failed" and "I am a failure." One describes an event, the other becomes your identity. Third, talk back. Sounds weird, but athletes do it. Therapists teach it. If your inner voice says you're going to embarrass yourself, answer it. Be like, "Maybe, but I've been wrong before, so I'ma try anyways." You're not trying to become fake positive. You're trying to become fair. Finally, if you notice that this voice is becoming overwhelming, if it's constant, making you miserable, or coming with anxiety or depression, it's worth talking to someone you trust or a mental health professional. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is get help teaching that voice a different language. Because here's the thing. Your inner voice learned how to speak, which means it can learn again. So, read the sentence silently. Did you hear a voice? What did it say? Did it agree or argue? Because the answer to that question tells you far more than whether you have an inner voice. It tells you what language it's been speaking all these years. That's it. Be cool and shut that voice up.